Hello, everyone. I'm Kirk Key, Associate Professor of Media and Communication at Texas Tech University, a Hispanic serving institution. I'm presenting some preliminary analysis from an online survey I conducted with Alex Oshansky and Shan Shu, who are also here at Texas Tech University. The title of our presentation is User Perceptions, Funding Correlates, and the Overachieving Cyber Infrastructure and Research Computing and Data Professionals, a preliminary analysis. This is the full version of the presentation, so this video will include more details on methods, analyses, and questionnaire design. If you would like to see the short version, please see link in the description. I would like to begin by providing some background information. The study was funded by the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure at the National Science Foundation in a career grant. The title of this career project is Organizational Capacity and Capacity Building for Cyber Infrastructure Adoption. The goal of this career project is to explore the social, organizational, and funding factors that facilitate the adoption and meaningful use of cyber infrastructure. Some of you participated in research interviews my team and I conducted a few years ago, so thank you. Findings from the interviews led to the current survey, which also includes studying the RCD professionals who develop CI and help users get on CI as part of capacity building for CI adoption. Now, let me briefly explain the purpose of this presentation. First, our goal is to share some preliminary findings, to thank a few special friends who provided very helpful feedback on our survey questionnaire design, and to also give back to the respondents who filled out our survey during wave 1 of data collection in fall of 2021. We hope the findings provide you at least one interesting insight today. Second, our goal is to recruit more participants. We currently have about 80 participants from wave 1, which we believe to be a good start for the study. In order to perform more robust analyses, we are aiming at reaching 800 participants during wave 2 of data collection by the end of this year, December 31st, 2022, in order to have more statistical power for analysis. So please help us reach that goal. The link to the survey is tinyurl.com/TTU 2022 CI survey. You can find the link to the survey at the bottom left of this slide. The link is also in the YouTube video description. We have also created a QR code on this slide if you would like to use it. At the end of the survey, you will have a chance to enter into a drawing for an Amazon gift card. We have about 160 gift cards for drawing, and each one is $50. When you get a gift card, please forward the link to your colleagues and friends in the RCD and CI world. We have more information on the gift cards and recruitment towards the end of this presentation. So stay tuned. Thank you. Okay, so let's get to the presentation with a preview. In this presentation, we will be sharing some findings about how CI users and RCD professionals differ on a few perceptions related to what may promote cyber infrastructure adoption, the correlates of CI funding, and also some DEI findings related to gender and ethnicity in the RCD profession. Okay, so one unique aspect of our analysis is the use of inferential statistics instead of descriptive statistics. What is the difference? Descriptive statistics are generally used to describe a sample, and they include calculating the mean, mode, median, standard deviation, frequency count, etc. However, with descriptive statistics, we only know what is in the sample, and we don't know if what we find in the sample is also true in the population from which the sample was drawn. But with inferential statistics, we will be able to make some inferences more confidently about the population or the community of CI users and RCD professionals in this case, by simply studying the sample. How? By interpreting the associated p-values. So throughout the presentation, you will hear me say something along the line of the p-value is below 0.05. So the result is statistically significant. And this means that what we just found in the sample is likely to be true in the population or larger community at the 95% confidence level. If p-value is above 0.05, this means that the result is non-significant or not yet significant statistically. The conclusion then is that the finding is only true in the sample and we cannot generalize it to the CI and RCD community until we obtain a larger data set in wave 2 to further investigate it. Also, when we use descriptive statistics and report the mean, median, and mode, we usually are reporting data associated with a single variable, such as the mean funding amount of respondents or the median citation count in the data set. However, with inferential statistics, you will notice that we constantly use two variables in the analysis, such as comparing the mean funding amount between males and females to determine if there is a systematic gender difference in how much PI obtains CI funding, or if citation count is correlated with the number of publications, so you can use one to predict the other. Okay, so with inferential statistics in this presentation, you will get a snippet of what we are able to do with this limited data set of 80 participants. If you like what you see, please help us get to 800 in wave 2 of data collection in 2022. Okay, now let's talk about the first main point with 4 findings related to CI users versus RCD professionals. So in the survey questionnaire, we provided respondents a list of about 20 roles, and we asked them to indicate all the roles they have ever occupied in their careers, as well as one primary role at the time of the survey. Based on their one primary role, we assigned them to 4 new categories. The first is users. This category includes co-producing users, pure users of existing tools, scientists, developers who are the scientists that develop their own computational tools. The second group is technology-focused RCD staff, and they include data, software, and systems-facing professionals, to name a few. Third, we have user-focused RCD staff, which includes researcher-facing professionals, outreach educators, etc. And finally, we have administrators who are the research strategy and policy-facing professionals, and center directors, for example. So for our first set of findings, we used one-way analysis of variance, also known as ANOVA, to test how the following 4 factors vary across the 4 groups of users, tech-focused and user-focused staff, as well as administrators. The factors are also arranged under the 2 subgroups of micro and macro levels of support for CI adoption. So let's take a look at our first factor, university CI user support, on the next slide. So we measure the first factor of university CI user support by rating the following statements. In our questionnaire, we asked respondents to indicate their degree of agreement or disagreement with some pre-designed statements on a 7-point Likert scale, 1 being strongly disagree and 7 being strongly agree. Some of the sample statements for measuring university user support include: my university allocates CI resources to its users, provides one-on-one consultation for CI users, organizes research computing workshops for CI users, holds data training opportunities for CI users. We did not analyze each statement individually. Instead, we calculated the average score of these statements combined and used the average score as a proxy value for respondents' overall perception of the CI user support that they have observed. In order to ensure that the statements do indeed help us assess a common concept of CI user support, we performed a reliability analysis using SPSS, and we obtained a Cronbach's alpha score of 0.836. This means that the statements we designed to measure user support has an internal consistency of 83.6% based on inter-item correlations. The common practice in the social sciences is to accept the average score as a reasonable proxy of the concept, in this case, university CI user support, if Cronbach's alpha is at least 0.70 and above. So based on the data, our composite measure of university user support met the statistical requirement. The F statistic shows that the ANOVA test is significant with a p-value below 0.05. This means some of the differences on opinions about university user support between the groups below are due to some systematic patterns and group memberships and not by a simple random chance. Without going into the traditional pairwise comparisons in ANOVA, we just want to show you the actual numbers of the 4 groups surveyed. So let's look at the first result. The administrators ranked the highest with an average score of 5.6042 out of 7 on the Likert scale, based on responses from 16 respondents who indicated that their primary roles are administrators. Next two, we have 22 user-focused staff and 22 tech-focused staff who averaged 5.5303 and 4.9621 respectively on their opinion about university user support. Last, we have the users who scored a 4.3667 out of 7 based on 10 respondents. Users as a group reported the lowest score. So what can we learn from finding number 1? My team and I would say there is a difference in how users perceive adequate user support for CI adoption versus those who are RCD professionals, with the biggest difference between users and the administrators. Note this, and you will begin to see a pattern after I review the next 3 findings. So next we have the second concept here. We asked the respondents if they knew enough CI support contacts that they could reach out to when they needed help. For this factor, we specifically wanted to focus on-campus and off-campus CI staff and peers that they can work with one-on-one when they have questions about CI and needed help. These statements achieve an internal consistency of 79.9%, which again met the statistical requirement to be considered reliable and consistent in measuring the concept. So for finding number 2, here are the rankings. User-focused staff show the highest with an average score of 5.8523 out of 7 as a group. Next, we have the administrators scoring an average of 5.8077 and tech-focused staff at 4.9773. The users come last again at 4.9250 out of 7. Because the F statistic shows that the ANOVA test has a p-value below 0.05, so the finding is statistically significant. It means that some of the differences in opinions are not due to some simple random chances. There is a systematic reason why users score the lowest again. Okay, now third, let's take a look at what we found about a pro-CI university administration. So we have the following statements. My university understands the value of CI, makes policies that support CI, includes all stakeholders in making CI policies and plans, and has strategic plans for sustaining CI for the long term. Again, we did not analyze each question individually. Instead, we calculated the average score across the 4 statements to generate an index to serve as a proxy of respondents' perception of pro-CI university administration. And you can see from the results here, finding number 3, again, users rank the lowest on their opinions about pro-CI university administration. That said, the F statistic is statistically non-significant because the p-value is above 0.05. It means that the difference between the groups on their opinions about pro-CI administration is only true in a sample, and we do not have enough evidence to make an inference about the population from which the sample was drawn. In other words, we need a bigger sample in order to get enough statistical power to retest if the patterns detected in the sample is also true in a larger population and community of CI users and RCD professionals. Okay, 4th, we have non-traditional culture as another factor here. So how did we measure this concept? We asked the respondents to rate the following statements, again on the 7-point Likert scale. The statements are, my university facilitates multidisciplinary collaborations, promotes cross-disciplinary knowledge sharing, encourage community-driven research, appreciates problem-based projects. These statements achieved at a Cronbach's alpha of 0.887, which means an internal consistency of 88.7% to measure a single concept of non-traditional culture. Finding number 4 shows us that users once again rank the lowest on their opinions about their campus's non-traditional cultural orientation. The F statistic did not achieve a p-value below 0.05, so the finding is only true in the sample. We do not yet have enough statistical evidence to generalize this finding from the sample to the larger community. Now, looking at the first set of 4 findings, the first 2 ANOVA tests show us that compared to RCD professionals, CI users believe that there is less help available at the micro level to support their CI adoption and use. Given the statistical evidence, these 2 first findings are likely to be true in a larger community. Furthermore, the last 2 ANOVA tests show that respondents in the sample believe that there is less support for CI-enabled research at the macro level in terms of insufficient pro-CI administration and not enough non-traditional research culture compared to RCD staff's perception. We believe that these findings, although they are a mix of statistically significant and non-significant results, give us a reason to consider an explanation for why some users are hesitant about adopting cyber infrastructure. So perceptions are different from facts. It is not surprising to see that administrators and RCD staff reported a higher perception of micro and macro levels of user support, as they are probably aware of more resources and context. What stood out for us is that users consistently rated the 4 factors the lowest. If users do not perceive the same, their CI adoption and use will be hampered in practice. So we see this as a good temperature check, if you will. Now, given these findings, we have some recommendations. We suggest spending more time and resources on changing user perceptions, such as making CI success stories more prominent on campus, partnering with departmental IT to make CI support context more accessible, working with university administration to more publicly recognize CI-enabled research, etc. The goal of these recommendations is to help reshape users' perception, which will have a direct impact on their actions. Next, let's talk about the second main point, the correlates of CI funding and funded projects. So in this analysis, we conducted a two-tailed Pearson correlational test to gauge the statistical correlates with the amount of CI funding and the number of funded projects received by CI users and RCD professionals. What we found was, for finding number 5, the amount of personal funding has a statistically significant and positive correlation with 2 factors. The first being team citations, which refers to the number of citations of the team respondents work with, and second being team patents, which refers to the number of patents from the team. Slightly over 40 respondents provided information about their funding information, as well as team citations and team patents for this calculation. The correlational coefficients are about 0.320 and 0.334 respectively. Both are considered moderate in size. The p-values are below 0.05. This means that there is strong statistical evidence that the observed correlational relationships are true in a larger community at a confidence level of 95%. The findings are likely generalizable to the larger community. But what does this really mean? It means to increase the chances of getting CI funding, one can decisively collaborate with teams that have more citations and patents. Perhaps citations and patents convey reputations, confidence, and accomplishments. All these make sense, but it was surprising to us that among the 30 plus factors that we tested, only these 2 turned out to be statistically significant. So the findings suggest that team citations and team patents are possibly the strongest predictors of winning CI funding. So the next finding, finding number 6, is even more surprising for us. The data suggests that the number of funded projects one receives is negatively correlated with team collaboration and external CI reputation. What do we mean by these 2 negative correlates? So in our questionnaire, we asked respondents to indicate their degree of agreement or disagreement with some pre-designed statements on a 7-point Likert scale, 1 being strongly disagree and 7 being strongly agree. And some of the sample statements for measuring team collaboration include: my team promotes knowledge sharing among team members, collaborates successfully with the team, values interpersonal skills as much as technical skills, and is able to resolve conflict constructively. We did not analyze each statement individually again. Instead, we calculated the average score of these statements combined and used the average score to create a composite index as a proxy value for their overall perception of their own team collaboration. So in order to ensure that the statements do indeed help us assess a single concept of team collaboration, we performed a reliability analysis using SPSS, and we obtained a Cronbach's alpha score of 0.914. This means that the statements we designed to measure team collaboration has an internal consistency of 91.4% based on inter-item correlations. And the second factor, external CI reputation, we asked respondents to rate the following statements. My team is recognized by peers in my field to be CI experts, often gets contacted by peers when they have questions about CI, knows which online resources to point peers to if they have questions about CI, and can recommend facilitator networks to peers if we cannot answer CI questions. Notice that the sense of reputation that we measure was partly related to helping others with CI. The statements collectively achieved a Cronbach's alpha of 0.866. It means that the 4 statements made up a very reliable composite measure of external CI reputation. Okay, so it was with these two average scores for the factors of team collaboration and external CI reputation that we performed the Pearson correlational test. Honestly, my team and I would have guessed the opposite, complete opposite without the data. We would have thought that the number of projects a CI wins is positively correlated with their team's effective collaboration and external CI reputation. But why did the data show us something different? And this is our interpretation. Perhaps to win more funded CI projects, one needs to focus on producing quality publications for citations and groundbreaking discoveries that can lead to patents, as suggested by finding number 5. And to do these, it requires a lot of time, efforts, and focus. So what does finding number 6 tell us? Having effective team collaborations and CI reputations are great conceptually, but empirically, the more time a PI spends on improving team collaboration, helping others with CI, and developing their CI reputation, the smaller number of funded projects he or she will likely get. So as a recommendation, perhaps PIs can hire project managers and communication professionals to help them manage team dynamics and external CI reputation. So they personally do not have to engage in these efforts, but focus on writing competitive grant proposals. Okay, now moving on to finding number 7. As mentioned earlier, the survey questionnaire included more than 30 factors that we wanted to test for correlations. Another finding that we gather from the correlation analysis is that the factor with the biggest number of correlates is non-traditional culture. So we talked about the factor of non-traditional culture earlier, so you can take a quick glance at the statements below this time. But they are about the campus supporting multidisciplinary, community-driven, and problem-based research. So with the average score of these 4 ratings, we ran the correlation analysis and found about 20 correlates with this factor shown on the next slide. Now, in the interest of time, I will not talk through each and every one of them in details, but you can pause the video for a moment and glance through the list. Whenever you're ready, you can hit the play button again to resume, and you may pause now. Okay, welcome back. So the correlational coefficients range from 0.259, which is considered approaching moderate in effect size, to 0.694, which is considered large. So all the correlations are positive except for one, and the exception is personal publications. What does this mean? It means while non-traditional culture may be good for many things, such as absorptive capacity, internal CI knowledge, there may still be a tension between the ability to publish many papers versus working in a non-traditional culture at a university. So one thought we have is that doing non-traditional culture, such as multidisciplinary, problem-based, and community-driven research may be exciting, and non-traditional research is what cyber infrastructure can facilitate. However, pursuing this may hurt one's publication record, given that many journals are narrowly specialized. So this finding is further evidence for why some researchers on tenure track and from disciplines that are more traditionally focused on disciplinary specific publications may have a hard time wanting to get on board cyber infrastructure. So my team and I would like to brainstorm with you all. One suggestion we have is for research computing centers to consider hiring a very small select group of domain-specific RCD staff to help new and inexperienced faculty users to support them all the way from research conceptualization through data collection, data analysis, to journal publications. Think about this special mission RCD unit like the highly trained individuals such as Tom Cruise in the movie Mission Impossible. The focus of this special mission RCD unit is to go deep instead of going wide. It means to help new users all the way to publications, as the last mile may be the most difficult and daunting for new users, with a transition to CI while making sure to produce enough publications for their tenure and promotion. The RCD staff can serve as co-authors on these publications with faculty in the faculty's domains. In that case, it may make sense to reward the special mission RCD staff for their performance, to include the number of publications they co-author with faculty. It's not simply how many faculty or projects they provide consultation to. Depending on a research computing center's funding model, some may be charged to go wide and not deep by design. And second, some centers may be short-staffed already, so they cannot dedicate any staff to go deep with new users. Third, some advanced users may see that what RCD staff do as service to their projects does not deserving co-authorships. So this recommendation of establishing a special mission RCD unit only makes sense for centers that have the resources to allocate to help new and inexperienced, and even potential users who would not otherwise get on cyber infrastructure. And also these centers need to have the bandwidth to take on more new and inexperienced users who would need this kind of deep help. So combining findings number 7 with the earlier findings from 1 through 4, perhaps it is time to rethink what user support means from faculty's perspective, especially those who are new to CI, and also those who need to ensure enough publications for their tenure case. Okay, finally, the third main point is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So first, we performed a t-test to compare the means of 3 factors between male and female respondents in the survey. As you can see on the slide, about 11 females and 57 males indicated their gender in the survey. No one selected the non-binary option, and some skipped this question during the survey. But for finding number 8, we found that on average, females tend to work in larger teams with an average of 36 members compared to males who tend to work in smaller teams of about 13 members. Now for finding number 9, females reported an average funding amount of $4.5 million compared to males with an average funding amount of $3.6 million. Both of these findings suggest that females tend to work in larger teams and have obtained more funding than males. But what may be an explanation here? So finding number 10 gives us a possible answer, and that is perhaps females have greater CI aspirations compared to their male counterparts. So in the survey, we asked the respondents to rate the following 4 statements. My personal CI expertise, my interest in learning more about CI, my desire to expand my CI professional networks, my professional ambition in the CI field, on a 7-point Likert scale again, but this time with 1 being none and 7 being the highest. Females as a group score an average of 5.3409 out of 7, compared with males as a group with an average score of 5.1535. This finding would suggest that females are more motivated about their CI and RCD careers compared to males in the same profession. However, they may have been a sampling bias, which means that only highly motivated females took our survey in our first wave of data collection. So in order to remove this concern, we would like to put out a call for more female participants in our second wave of data collection. So after the second wave of data collection, if the average score for females remain higher than males with a bigger data set, this means that females are indeed overachieving. If the average score for females drops below males at a statistically significant level, then we know that we have more gender equality work to do. That said, back to the first wave of data collection, as you can see on this slide, the findings with a p-value greater than 0.05 tells us that the findings are only true in the sample so far, and we cannot confidently generalize it to the larger community. Statistically speaking, we still need more data to further compare males and females, as well as non-binary individuals on the 30 plus factors we measure in the survey questionnaire. So next, we looked at ethnicity with a t-test as well. In the actual questionnaire, we asked respondents to indicate their ethnicity by choosing from several options, such as white, black, Hispanic, Asian, etc. However, there were so few people of colors, and we cannot meaningfully compare between specific groups. Given this limitation, what we did was we combined the 9 people of colors in our sample into a new group that we called non-whites. And this is to create a better statistical comparison with the larger group of 49 respondents who indicated their ethnicity as white. We note this as a limitation of our first wave of data, not that we do not respect the cultural differences between those we loosely put into the non-white group. That said, let's take a look at the findings. So finding 11 shows that there is a systematic difference between whites and non-whites in terms of personal citations. Non-whites as a group reported an average of more than 7,000 citations, while whites reported an average of slightly over 1,000. Finding number 12 indicates that whites and non-whites also differ systematically in terms of the number of publications with the teams they work with. So non-whites reported almost 300 team publications on average, while whites only having 131 team publications on average. As indicated by the t-statistics, finding number 11 and finding number 12 are statistically significant, which means that the differences between whites and non-whites in terms of personal citations and team publications are likely to be true also in the larger community beyond the sample. Now, finding 13 suggests that non-whites have an average of more than 11,000 team citations compared to whites with an average team citation of slightly below 5,000. This finding is only true in the sample and not generalizable with a p-value above 0.05. So what do the findings mean? Perhaps due to consistent efforts of promoting DEI in STEM over the past decade, women and ethnic minorities who made their ways into RCD and CI are overachieving compared to the white males in the same profession. Another possible interpretation is, so perhaps women and ethnic minorities transition to RCD from a former faculty career. And that's why they brought with them a track record of funding, publications, and citations. And again, there could have been a sampling bias that the 9 non-whites who took our survey are the most successful ones. In other words, having such a small number of non-whites in the sample may have biased the results. So again, we need a larger sample to reduce the sampling error. So now we have 2 last findings to share before we wrap up. Let's take a look at finding number 14. So we performed a chi-square test to see if there is a gender association with the primary roles of the respondents in the table shown here. This is how you would interpret the numbers. So the top row shows the respondents' primary roles. And the first left column shows their gender. But for each gender, notice that there are two sub rows showing two numbers for actual and expected. So the actual number refers to the exact number of males and females under each primary row listed at the top, according to the given sample. But the expected numbers indicate the number of expected number of respondents for each row if there is no gender association with the rows respondent occupied. So recall that there were 11 females and 57 males among the respondents who indicated a gender in the sample. Let me give you an example to demonstrate how to read this table further. So if there is no gender association with serving the role of an administrator, given this particular sample, we would have expected to see 2 females and 12 males, as indicated by the numbers in the red circles. But the actual distribution is 4 females and 10 males in the sample. The data does show that while there seems to be more female administrators than statistically expected, the numbers of males and females for the tech focus and user focused staff are exactly matching what you would expect to see if there is no gender association with primary roles, as shown in the numbers in blue in the red box. Also, the difference between males and females for users is minimal. Moreover, the chi-square test is not statistically significant, which also helps us arrive at the interpretation that there isn't enough statistical evidence to claim that gender is associated with how professionals end up picking what roles in the RCD world as their primary roles. So in the social sciences, we are not always looking for statistically significant findings. In this particular case, having a statistically non-significant result for gender association with primary role means that there is insufficient evidence to raise any DEI concern here. Overall, I would say that finding 14 is a good finding in terms of gender equality and inclusion in this data set. So, okay, here we have the very last finding number 15. So we did a similar chi-square test with whites versus non-whites. While there are no matching actual and expected head counts in any of the categories, the differences are again minimal. Also, the test again is statistically non-significant, which also means that there isn't enough statistical evidence to claim that there is an ethnic association with primary roles. And this is a good thing, I would say. That said, I do want to note that, statistically speaking, given the sample of 9 non-whites and 49 whites, we would have expected 2 administrators who are non-white. However, the actual data shows us that there are no administrators who are non-white, as indicated by the 0 in blue in the red circle. So this raises the question of whether this is due to a simple random chance or there was something to be suspicious of. Perhaps there is a systematic barrier that blocks non-whites from administration, or perhaps they were respondents who were non-whites, but they simply skipped indicating their ethnicity in the questionnaire. So what can we learn from the findings about DEI? Perhaps non-whites and females who made it into the CI and RCD world are working very hard to achieve the traditional indicators of academic success, such as funding, publications, and citations. And they have also developed a high degree of CI aspiration. In these findings, we also can say that if the patterns remain the same and they are confirmed statistically, with a larger data set in the second wave of data collection, then it means that all the DEI efforts have successfully changed the landscape. But we want to be cautious not to swing the pendulum too far, such that white males become the new disadvantaged category in the CI and RCD world. So now, conclusions. This project explores how CI users reported a lower perception of micro and macro level of CI support, and we interpreted this pattern as a possible perception that hinders CI adoption. The analysis also reveals that the correlates of CI funding includes team citations and patents and less efforts in managing one's team collaboration and external CI reputation. Also, we showed that females and ethnic minorities may be overachieving with a high CI aspiration today. However, certain barriers to administration may still remain for ethnic minorities. Again, we need a bigger sample size, a bigger data set in order to reduce sampling errors. We have more analyses to do going forward. This preliminary analysis is not without limitations. For example, the data set is very small with even fewer users, females and ethnic minorities in the data to make better statistical comparisons. So we need more of these respondents in our second wave of data collection. Next, the survey questionnaire is a bit long. However, the length is necessary to allow us to perform inferential statistics with two or more variables together in the same data set. Third, some questions are more focused on faculty users and others are more focused on RCD staff. So some respondents who only have experience occupying one role may not know how to answer some of the questions, and they may skip some of the questions, or they may have picked 4 out of 7 to indicate a neutral score on the Likert scale. Moreover, not every respondent has a direct university affiliation and or have experience working with students in their RCD positions. So some questions about university and students may not be applicable to some. But overall, we aim to achieve a bigger data set of 800 respondents during wave 2 of data collection. With a bigger data set, we will be able to further segment the data into analysis based on users only, or RCD professionals only, or those who have a university affiliations only, or those without a university affiliation only. So now allow me to say a few words about our approach to survey research. The survey is completely anonymous on Qualtrics. As you can see, the analysis is based on aggregated data and the findings are at the macro level. We never drill down to a specific individual respondent. That's not what we do in statistical analysis of survey and social science research. The goal is to identify findings that can help us extrapolate patterns from the sample and make inferences about the larger community. We are not interested in analyzing individual cases in isolation. And our questionnaire contains many more variables, and we plan to analyze with the larger data set that we will get by the end of this year. For example, we can compare between dispersed teams versus co-located teams, early CI adopters versus late adopters, users in STEM versus non-STEM disciplines, RCD professionals, and CI adoption at public schools versus private schools versus minority serving institutions. We can also consider other demographic variables such as age, educational backgrounds, etc., of CI users and RCD professionals. There are many more analyses to do and findings to share. And in terms of analysis, my research team and I plan to do exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis, structural equation modeling, path analysis, and hierarchical regression with a larger data set from the second wave of data collection. So we hope you enjoy our presentation today. We presented 15 findings, but only 7 of them are statistically significant due to a very small data set of 80 respondents. The 7 findings are the only findings that we can state at the 95% confidence level that they are likely to be true in the RCD community beyond the sample of 80. We would need 800 respondents to have enough statistical power for more robust analysis to further understand the larger community. Please help us get there. Anyone in the CI and RCD world can participate. Faculty users, tech-facing staff, user-facing staff, administrators, student RAs, lab managers, postdocs, consultants, etc. Please take our survey, and the link is tinyurl.com/TTU 2022 CI survey. The link is also in the description. And you can help us recruit too. A recruitment script that you can adapt to send to your contacts can be found at tinyurl.com/TTU 2022 recruitment. We also provided a QR code for your convenience if that's easier for you to link directly to the survey on your phone. Please share this video with your colleagues, mailing lists, etc. And we promise to share our findings again with the community in a similar fashion. Our goal is to help build capacity in CI users and RCD professionals toward widespread CI adoption. Now, if you decide to participate and take our survey, you will first take the survey on Qualtrics. And on the thank you page, you will have the opportunity to click on a link that takes you to a separate Google form to enter into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. We plan to give out 1 gift card with every 5 entries that come in, so drawing is ongoing. We have about 160 gift cards to give out over the next few months. We plan to keep the survey open until the end of this year, December 31st, 2022. But please take this survey ASAP before we run out of gift cards. Okay, that's all we have for our preliminary analysis from the first wave of data collection. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to email me at kirk.key@ttu.edu. On behalf of my research team, I would like to thank you for helping us figure out the puzzle of the social, organizational, and funding factors that can influence cyber infrastructure adoption and the RCD profession. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.